Welcome to What in the World, a project initiated by Hungry for Life International. Today's podcast is titled The Hunger Virus, and Jess will be interviewing Jason Krul. So grab your headphones, sit back, relax, and listen as they talk about how COVID-19 has impacted developing countries and how we can respond.
Hi, and welcome to our Hungry for Life podcast. Today we are discussing the topic of the hunger virus that has been so prevalent since COVID-19 has hit us over a year ago. And here chatting about that today with us is our fellow staff member, Jason Krul. Hi, Jason.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. Jason is our Director of International Operations, and he's here to shed some light on the issue that's bigger than the coronavirus that our field partners are facing, which is hunger. So diving right in here, Jason, can you tell our audience what is the hunger virus?
Sure. It's not actually a virus.
Right. Okay, it's not a virus. Tell us a bit about what it is.
Absolutely. And so about a year ago when the global pandemic became a thing and became widely known around the world as it was spreading, we started talking to some of our different field partners and quickly realized that for many, they weren't actually worried about the virus. Here in the West, we've got the resources that when the government tells us to go into lockdown or we have to stay home or close our businesses, most of us either have the resources, the savings to be able to get us through that time, or we have a government system that can take care of us. Mm-hmm. A lot of the poor in the world, they don't have that opportunity. They are struggling to survive. They're living day to day, hand to mouth. And when they can't go to work, when they can't leave their home, it means they're not eating. And so that term hunger virus became a thing that became something that Hungry for Life attached to as an initiative and said, you know what, it's more than just the COVID effects that people are getting around the world and the virus. It's also millions of people that are being impacted by this impact of lack of food and hunger.
Yeah. I want to read a quote that I came across from an article I found on Oxfam. And I want to know your thoughts on that. So the crisis, that being the hunger virus, is not about a lack of food. These devastating hunger levels are a symptom of a broken food system that has allowed millions of people to go hungry on a planet that produces more than enough food for everyone. So what are your thoughts on that? Is it a broken food system? Is it a lack of food? Like, why is this problem happening?
Mm-hmm. It's a really good question. And, you know, it's a very complex question that predates even COVID. There's almost 2 billion people in this world that are living in extreme poverty, living on what they classify as $1.25 US a day. And so when COVID started happening, what happened in the global economics was that food prices started rising. I think the World Bank estimates that food prices went up by 20 or 25% in 2020.
It's crazy.
And so a $50 sack of rice that a family would usually buy for a month now becomes $60 or $65. And that little bit of cost increase, which seems little to us, is a huge amount. If you can imagine trying to live on $1.25, there is no buffer in there for savings. There is no buffer in there for rainy days, for those days that you can't work. And so what's happening is, and why it's happening, is there's so many people in this world that are living in these developing countries that are living day to day, and they can't access the extra finances it takes to buy food. And when food prices are rising, it makes it extra hard. So you're absolutely right. It's not about a lack of food in the world. It's not even a lack of food in some of these countries. It's just that the majority of people in these countries that are living on day to day, they can't access the food. They don't have the resources and the means to purchase the food.
Right, because are you saying because their jobs have been mitigated, have stores closed down? What has been, I think you kind of answered this already, but just to lay it out really clearly, what is the biggest logistical struggle in these people getting their food?
Sure. You know, initially when COVID started spreading around the world, it was initially a lot of countries around the world started going into lockdowns and started closing businesses. So for the first bunch of months, even in countries like Haiti and in Kenya and other places, they went into full lockdowns jobs were lost. People who had small little businesses on the side of the road were being told you can't have that. You have to close up shop. And they're forced with very difficult decision. If they don't sell their 15 oranges today, it means that they can't have the money to buy some rice. And they're faced with a very difficult decision. The longer this pandemic has gone on, some of the countries we're working are still in that situation where they're still struggling with lockdowns, government restrictions, and loss of jobs. But in other countries, they're still reeling from a whole year of their businesses being shut down and schools closed. In some places where schools have been closed for almost a year, teachers aren't being paid, there's no tuition, kids aren't going to school, and it just makes a very, very difficult economic problem and challenge for that country and for the people that live there.
Right. So in your communications with our different field partners, so field partners, for those of you who don't know, are the people that Hungry for Life has built relationship with, and we have an ongoing reciprocal relationship of, like, we send them money through donor groups. At the moment, we're doing a hunger virus campaign that we'll get to, but in talking with our field partners who we have established relationship with, are all of them kind of dealing with the same issues, or are there some countries that corruption is more prevalent, or some describe Haiti or India, or what's happening specifically right now?
Sure. Just in our initial response to the hunger virus, it's a really good question that you're asking, because we have asked the same question as project managers and as a team. How do we best help? And that really depends. We want to tailor our response according to what the needs are. And we are seeing things very different in different countries. Some countries like India right now, which are being massively impacted by COVID and the virus. Other countries like Haiti, where for whatever strange reason, that's another discussion for another podcast, is not experiencing the same kind of case numbers and death toll. And so one of the things that we did right off the bat was we sent out a questionnaire to all of our field partners and said, how is COVID, in light of this pandemic, how is this affecting you? How is this affecting people in your community? How is this affecting your ministry? And how can we help? And we were shocked to see that almost every one of our field partners came back and said, food is what we need right now, for various reasons. In some countries, like we said, it was because of the lockdowns and because they couldn't get they weren't able to access food. Other countries like Haiti, it caused massive instability. The rise of food prices and the inflation of their currency, which inflated almost 100%, caused massive rioting, caused political instability, and it was less about COVID and more so about the fact that it was unsafe in the country as a result of all these compounding issues. And so it's not just about COVID, and that's why we've using this term hunger virus. COVID is the underlying problem that's just added fuel to the fire. It's added fuel to the fire for countries that already have starving people, already are desperately poor, already need help. And in countries like Haiti and others where there is a lot of government corruption, when aid goes to the country and it doesn't go to where it needs to go to, that just infuriates the people, the recipients, and it also causes donor fatigue. People don't like giving to something that they don't know if the money's going to go to where it's supposed to go. And so that just adds extra problem there.
And to speak to what you're just saying there, another quote that I read in some of my research about the hunger virus is, again, from Oxfam, and it says, the coronavirus pandemic has added fuel to the fire of this growing hunger crisis. So this hunger crisis is not new. It's already existed. But the coronavirus has just amplified existing inequalities and vulnerabilities while pushing millions of people into food insecurity as a result of spiraling unemployment and economic disruption caused by the disease. And it's something that I really wanted to highlight in this podcast is, like, we go into lockdown and we're all bummed, and I don't want to come down on the struggle that people here are facing, because it is real for us too, but we can go to Costco and stock up on what we need for a 2-week, or as we are experiencing 1 year lockdown scenario, not quite, but and that's not the case all around. So it's like government is telling everyone, go home and stay home. It's not easy for people around the world to just go home and stay home. People are dying of hunger, and that's like, it's crazy to even think about, like, what we're experiencing for lockdown, or or as far as the coronavirus goes, and what a lot of the majority of the world is experiencing. So I really wanted to highlight that. So
Sure.
yeah, thanks for bringing attention to that.
And we actually had, like, to add and compound to that,
Yeah.
we had one of our partners in the Middle East highlighted something that, it's very true. I've heard from a few of our partners that in this time of this pandemic, there's actually been a number of organizations, big and small, that have pulled out for various reasons. Have pulled out of the country that they're working due to lack of finances, due to staff members needing to go back home to be back in the country where they're from. And then the lack of travel and tourism and foreign aid just in general has really impacted a lot of projects and ministries around the world globally, which has contributed to the lack of funds going to things like food security.
Yeah, and another stat that I read, this one I'm not actually sure where it came from, but it was saying that in this last year, the food and beverage industry in North America has done better than ever, and it distributed over $18 billion worth of money into their shareholders. And only half of that was really called for in a campaign to end the hunger virus. And that's staggering, really. So that's just a stat I wanted to point out. What do you think is a long-term effect on our field partners of the coronavirus?
That's a great question. There's been a number of impacts, and I think, like you said, they're going to be lasting impacts. One of the first things that comes to mind with a lot of our partners who have relied heavily on, support from foreign groups, foreign churches and groups here in North America, is the lack of teams, the lack of groups, the lack of operational support for their programs. I can think of a number of different ministries that are really struggling right now in Haiti and other places in Kenya because they don't have that same level of support from churches. There's a lot of churches that have been closed here for quite some time and are struggling financially themselves already. And so that's going to be a longer challenge for them. Some of their projects, something as simple as a school project. I have an example of a school that we partner with in San Raimundo in Guatemala. They were well on their way to self-sufficiency. We've been working with the school for a number of years, helping build some infrastructure, helping them build up their own self-sustainability. And they were well on their way to next year becoming almost completely self-sustainable. We have a church here in Canada that helps support their operations. And because of the COVID crisis and because of the school being forced to shut down and go online, and they're still able to do some education, but because of all the restrictions, they haven't been able to raise the same amount of funds in the community that they were. Typically, they were having church services and collections in their own community in Guatemala. They also were selling food and snacks at the school. They had all kinds of little community fundraiser events that they were doing locally. And they were building up on that and actually reducing the amount of money coming from Canada. And what's happened now is that whole plan has been set back probably 3 to 5 years, unfortunately.
Really?
And that means, there's people there that they were able to meet the tuition needs. They were able to pay for, 50 to 90% of their tuition costs. And now families who've lost their jobs or struggling more and more financially are not able to pay tuition for their kids. And that compounded by these extra funds that the community cannot raise means that the school is going, well, in order for us to stay open, we have a budget operating deficit that we need help with meeting. Otherwise, we're going to have to temporarily close our school. And so that's just one example of many where it's been a huge impact on the partner. And then, like I said, there's various projects that are on hold right now because where the priority used to be to finish this capital project, the partner is now going, we can't even get the funds to maintain our ministry and to maintain the feeding program that we do. We need to shift our focus right now to the immediate needs and put on hold these long-term plans. Yeah. So what that means is these long-term plans now get pushed out further.
It's more about being reactive at this point than proactive for a lot of them. Yeah. You and I were talking a bit before we recorded this, and you told me a story that I want you to share on here.
Sure. Yeah, I'll share you a story about a little boy his name's Abu, and he's from Ethiopia, lives on the streets in Addis Ababa. And Abu's got a really sad story, and I don't want to go into a lot of details about it. You can find his story on our website. But basically, Abu's parents passed away when he was a very young age. and he found himself living with a step parent who was pretty abusive to him and basically chased him out of the house. And he ended up living on the streets at the age of, I think, 7 or 8 years old. And the way he could survive was picking through the garbage and the trash. In Ethiopia, the restaurants and the hotel industries, at the end of each day, all their leftover food would get dumped off in the back of the property and brought to a trash dump. And a lot of the young kids and homeless people would dig through the trash and get the food waste, and that's what they would be able to survive on. One of the effects of COVID in Ethiopia was all the hotels and businesses and restaurants got shut down under government restriction and lockdowns. And so that food that was making its way out to the dump was no longer there. There's a quote from Abu as he was digging, trying to find some food in the garbage dump. He was found not wearing a mask. And in Ethiopia, I'm not sure if it's still the case right now, but at the time, it was actually an offense. You could get arrested if you were not wearing a mask on the street. And Abu was like 8 or 9 years old right now, and he got stopped, and they asked him, "Where's your mask? Why are you not wearing a mask?" And his quote, he says, "Now I'm on the street, desperate to find food. I don't care about this virus. I'm just worried not to die from hunger before the virus comes." And that just really, in my mind, emphasizes that there's a lot of people in this world that are not, they're living day to day, and they're not worried about maybe contracting a virus. That it is scary, it is real, and I understand that. But if they can't get food today, they're hungry and they can't survive. And people like Abu who are living day to day, trying to scrounge through the garbage, trying to find food. And it was thankful that our partner there was able to find him and help him out. And through the Hunger Virus campaign, we were able to do a feeding program and food distribution and help this young boy be able to get back on his feet a little bit with some food.
Yeah, what a crazy story. Okay, you mentioned it a little bit already, our campaign. But before we get to that, I want to ask you, what do you think? You're in the throes of it. You're talking to our field partners on the daily. What do you think as North Americans is the best way for us to help?
The best way to help is to do what you can. There's so many needs in the world around us. There's so many things to give to, so many different ministries and organizations asking for funds. And, the needs around us are massive. When we talk about 2 billion people who are in extreme poverty, it seems like, how does my $50 make a difference? And it reminds me of an example of the story of the starfish. Many of you guys might know the story already, but I like to use it to highlight the point. There was a big storm that washed up all of these starfish up on the shore after a big storm. And a grandfather and his grandson went down to the beach, and they looked down at the beach on the ocean, and as far as they could see, there was just starfish just drying out on the sun, as far as you could see. And the grandson went down to the beach and started picking up the starfish and tossing them in the ocean, one at a time. And there was thousands and thousands and thousands of them there. And the grandfather came up to him and said, "What are you doing? What are you doing, son? Like, you can't clean up this entire beach. There's way too much. You're not going to be able to make an impact or make a difference." And he picked up a starfish and he held it up to his grandfather and he says, "For this one here, it makes a difference." And that's what I want to encourage our listeners to is you might think like, what can I do? I'm 19 years old. I've got a job working on a farm. How does my potential $50 or $100, or how does my contribution going to make any difference to the millions and millions of people who are going hungry? Well, it does, because for $50, for some of our partners, $50 can give food to a family for a whole month. And so that's what I want to encourage, is not to be paralyzed by how huge the needs are, but to look at how can I make a difference? What can I do? And before COVID was a thing, that used to be, contact us. Let's go on a trip somewhere. Let's go see the needs yourself, and your eyes will be open to it, and you'll find a way that you can help out and contribute. But you still can do it even without traveling. There's still a way that we can help out those who are in a much worse state.
Yeah, and for those of you who are new to Hungry for Life, typically what we do is we send groups and teams, and we facilitate other people's projects for them. But we're in a bit of a unique situation right now, and we don't typically just take straight donations for projects, but we have something called the Hunger Virus campaign. And Jason, can you explain a bit about how that works?
Sure. Yeah, so we've touched on it a little bit, but basically what we've done is with each of our partners, we work in 14 countries, 25 partners around the world. we've set up a separate account, and we've set up a separate initiative for each one of them. So we've listened to what the needs are in their community, and they slowly transition. Like I said, initially it was all about food and providing food. There's some of our partners who've actually been able to transition away from that emergency relief to more sustainable development projects. And I don't want to get too far off on a tangent with that, but
that's another podcast.
Just highlighting the emphasis of and there's some that have been doing food and have now been able to transition to saying, let's provide other opportunities to be able to help people help themselves by providing goats and providing irrigation and agricultural projects. So in different countries we're working, we have a different type of initiative, but we give anyone the ability to go on our website and to say, hey, I don't care where these funds go to, I want it to go to where needed most. And they can go to our website and do that. Or you can, if there's a project that you and your group or your church is connected with and you want to be able to help that partner specifically, then we have a little bit of information about what that partner is doing in that country as it relates to COVID relief, as it relates to the hunger virus, and how you can help.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so thank you. That kind of wraps up what I wanted to ask you all about the hunger virus. But if people are moved by the stories that they've heard, or if they want to know how to get involved, like Jason said, on our website, which is www.hungryforlife.org, it will guide you through how you can donate specifically to the hunger virus campaign. Also, share with as many people as possible. The bigger the voice, the bigger the impact. The more that people know about what's happening in the world, the more starfish we can save. And so ways to do that, we'll be posting this on our social media accounts as well. So you can share that on Facebook or Instagram, or just email the link to people, or just talk about it. There's so much news that overshadows this issue, and it doesn't get enough attention, in my opinion, anyways. So let's change that. Let's do that. And yeah, just go check out our website at hungryforlife.org. And anything to add to that?
No, I'd just like to, in close, say, the Lord has blessed us immensely with so many blessings here in the Western world. And I feel like we have a responsibility to care for those who are neglected and forgotten. Those who don't have a voice, we could be the voice for them. And we've provided an opportunity for anyone to be able to give, and 100% of that donation goes directly to that project. So when you give your $50, your $100, your $1,000, gives to COVID relief, to our hunger virus campaign, every dollar of that goes directly to that initiative.
Good point. Thank you for pointing that out. I almost forgot our 100% model. That wraps up this podcast. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
And that's it.
Thanks for listening to What in the World, where we seek to educate and inspire. Here at Hungry for Life, we are passionate about your group having a global impact and eradicating needless suffering. For more information, head over to our website at hungryforlife.org. And you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you may listen to podcasts. Tune in every other week for another conversation about what is happening at Hungry for Life.